is always very important exercise for us. First of all, we want to see the progress from the previous PEFA assessments, and also we want to identify the remaining weaknesses. PFM reform was always in a very high agenda at the Ministry of Finance. We did quite significant progress in this direction, and so you always want to measure yourself against expectations. So I think that PEFA assessment is very important as a measurement and as a guidance for the future reforms. PEFA reports for Georgia was quite positive. I would say very positive. We have seen significant improvements in many areas, and I would not be able to tell about surprises. But again, PEFA assessment for us was important for the future actions, and as a result of it, we already came up with a new reform agenda, and on that we are working with different financial institutions who are providing very important reform, including EU, including the World Bank, and in the agreed reform agenda in several directions. So PEFA findings are used as important reforms. From the PEFA process, the last one was very important because we expected significant improvements. There were significant reforms undertaken, especially, I would say, fiscal risk assessment and looking at the fiscal risk management was a relatively new exercise for us. So in my opinion, since it was myself who started this process, it was important to know and to measure the achievements that we have in this process against PEFA assessment criteria. And I think that was very important, good to know the weaknesses, the remaining weaknesses. I think that we have concrete steps as a result of these assessments, and especially regarding to some state-owned enterprises, and we are really trying to change the processes in a way that to have financial information of the state-owned enterprises more public, in a more timely manner. A better analysis is done, and so fiscal risk management was something that we wanted to measure ourselves in the assessment. We have a new TPO arrangement with the World Bank, so that's one example where PFM reforms are one part of the reform program within this arrangement with the World Bank, and the main program in this PFM reform is coming from the PEFA assessment. So I would say that our reforms in accountability, in public finance management, is very much driven by PEFA assessment. The main strength of PEFA assessment is a very strong and comprehensive methodology of the assessment. During assessment process, of course, it is not only assessment, but you learn actually more. You learn about approaches, about methodologies, about what and how the reform should be implemented. And this cooperation between PEFA assessment team and Ministry of Finance of Georgia was very important to understand certain things. For me, for my colleagues at the Ministry of Finance, and generally it was a very important process. It's really hard to say. First of all, of course, in terms of assessment methodology, it's quite sophisticated. I would not have comments about that. But on the other hand, I think that to build more on, not only on assessment, but also more clarification, maybe how to deal with these issues. So PEFA assessment can be improved in a way that some recommendations might come up to assist the countries to address those weaknesses that were identified. We started with PFM reform some 10-12 years ago. It were our first steps, but these 12 years were, really rich of reforms. And what is important here is that when you see the results, that of course motivates people. The most tangible result for Georgia, I would name being number 5 in the ranking of Open Budget Index. So that is important, and that motivates Ministry of Finance, staff at the Ministry of Finance who did this progress more. And what we can say is that these past achievements actually are creating a reform trajectory which is quite robust and quite consistent, and we are following it. So this PEFA assessment actually provides quite significant motivation to the countries, and the countries that see the progress, of course, that's a motivation for the future reforms.